A young boy gets slammed onto the grand hall's floor, and a man jabs a finger at him, spitting that he's a disgrace, while a woman watches in icy, heartless silence. Anil Velvet snaps his head up in total disbelief. Then the man drops the bomb. Since Anil's granted job as producer, he's been cut loose and doesn't belong in this house anymore. 2 years after that bombshell, a lone-covered wagon, tugged by two tough horses, plows through the jagged, wild mountain wilderness. He rides aboard the wagon, and the now 20-year-old Anhol stares off with a faraway look in his eyes, while the driver yells back that they're almost at their destination. The driver whips around to face him, asks how the ride felt, and brags like his driving is unbeatable, then casually drops that they say Anhol is the eldest son of the proud Belvalet family. With a heavy, somber stare, he shuts the guy down and corrects his wrong assumption. Then Anhol drops the truth. He's no longer part of the Belvalet family because they exiled him from the house, and the driver freezes, speechless. He keeps talking and drops this bombshell. The Belvalats, his family, are an elite noble line in the Kingdom of Guardia, famous for spawning generation after generation of brutal, top-tier knights. And as the eldest son, he was meant to take the crown. There was no other plan. His mind drifts back to the world's core rule. When you hit 18, the gods hand you a profession that gifts you powers and basically charts your whole life. His father, Leonis, was blessed with the Dark Knight profession and rose to become the kingdom's knight commander. His mother, Irina, earned the Reaper's envoy, raised by parents who already carried impossible promise. And from the moment he was a kid, everyone expected greatness to bloom in him. The document tossed him a profession he'd never even heard of, producer, and the memory hit like a punch. His own shock, his frantic calls to his mom and dad, and their flinching, disappointed looks. And ever since that day, his personal hell started. He still remembers that moment like it's burning into his skin, kicked across the floor, a furious order barking that he stays locked in his room, and him begging for scraps since days have passed with no food, only to be snapped at that it doesn't matter, and that he better never show up again. He finishes his tale and says that 2 years after he got banished, his younger brother Dalmas finally earned the combat path, Knight of Thunder. Now that the right successor was standing in his place, they stripped him of everything and sent him packing to some brutal faraway frontier, and that's the whole reason he ends up here. The story snaps back to the rumbling wagon, and the driver curses under his breath. He'd bet on something noble, only for it to turn out to be a total dud. Hearing him, Anhel stays stone calm and cuts him off. He's done with the Belvalet family for good. He keeps talking with a soft smile, telling the driver his skills don't need any noble title behind them, because from this moment on, he's just ASAL. The second he finishes, the wagon jerks to a stop, and the driver blares, "We're here." With the journey finally done, they hopped down from the wagon's back and shot the driver a quick, heartfelt thank you. He strides alone along a grassy path, a pack riding his shoulder, eyes locked on the building that's finally coming into view, the house. Standing in front of a towering two-story manor choked with vines, he nods like it's fate. This is where he's calling home from now on, and a dark, knowing smirk spreads across his face. Then, just like that, his sinister glare disappears, and pure, unfiltered joy takes over his face. Tears spill as he clenches his fist and shouts, "It's perfect." He throws his arms wide and roars in triumph, freedom at last, staring out at a far-off land with nobody around, finally free from everything. Staring up at that towering old manor, beat up by the years but still standing, determination hits him like a spark, because this is where his brand new life begins. Bursting with excitement, he shoves one of the massive front doors open to peek inside, then his bright smile instantly falls into confused uncertainty. He stepped inside, and instead of dread, thrill hit him in the chest, because this rundown house meant great airflow to him, not doom. With a clenched fist pump, he swore his first mission was simple: clear a spot to sleep. With that resolve blazing in him, he scanned the huge, dusty room, wiping the sweat off his brow as he geared up to get to work. After wrestling through it, he finally crumpled onto a shockingly solid sofa. Like, yes, asterisk, he could breathe now and kick back in his new home. While he finally caught his breath, one sharp thought hit him. This whole confinement never let him do a thing, so now he had to check his status, test his skills, and take stock of his gear. Once his base was set, the next mission was simple but urgent: lock down food. He pulled up the interface, eyes darting over it, hunting for every useful skill he might actually have. His hunt uncovered 2 starting skills, fishing and mining, both sitting at level 1, and he couldn't wait a second longer. Moments later, beside a nearby stream, his line yanked hard and he knew it. The fish was on. With a thunderous heave, he hauled a massive fish straight from the water. Soon his bucket was crammed with a huge catch. Until the moment he stared at it, a fresh disaster reared its head. The problem was brutally simple. He'd never cooked a day in his life. He just stared at that raw fish, totally frozen, not a clue how he was even supposed to eat it. Right as despair crushed him, a brand new skill snapped into place, butchery pulled straight from his fishing know-how. Then he tore into the fish with absolute mastery, triumph blazing on his face. He'd done it. He dug into that meal with a huge sigh of relief. His food crisis was finally handled for the moment. And then he hurried out to test his mining skills, hunting for rare, valuable ore, because if he struck it rich, he could hit up the shops in town and finally live easy. He slams into something promising. When he grips the raw dark mineral, his eyes snap open and he instantly recognizes it, Greshant. He knows plain raw ore won't sell for much. Greshant is the real prize, a mineral everyone's hunting because it's the key ingredient for weapons, armor, and accessories, so the demand never dies. Then it hits him. If fishing skills can unlock butchery, maybe mining has its own secret skill too. He followed that gut feeling, locked onto the ore, and pushed his will into it. Bam! A blazing light wrapped his hand as he unlocked a brand new skill. Refine, LV1 ***, a straight-up mining sub-skill. His theory had been dead on. Later on, he finally barrels through the 3-hour ride to the nearby town of Central Ryua, where a local merchant sizes up the refined Greshant and can't hide his awe at how pure it is, saying it'll fetch a huge price. Then the deal closes with a quick thank you and an open invitation to come back anytime. He bolts out of the shop, grinning ear to ear, clutching a heavy pouch of coins like it's pure treasure. With his brand new fortune in hand, he throws himself a lavish feast, sinking into every bite like it's a reward he earned, and all he can think is this is the fanciest meal he's tasted in 2 brutal years. His mind races to this brand new life, sure. The house looks shabby, but it's finally his asterisk, no more stressing over food or money, and he can't help realizing just how insanely convenient his producer ability really is. But just as his happiness settles in, a shadow slides over it. His eyes snap to a far-off, towering structure, and the contrast between it and his humble home hits him hard, leaving one unfinished thought hanging in the air. After half a month of non-stop mining and refining, he finally piles up a solid fortune, and when he looks at the wild, overgrown yard, he decides it's time to rip through the mess and start cleaning up his property. Back in Central Ryua, right after he buys that herbicide, he slumps and relives how brutal that walk was, then thinks, maybe I should grab a horse. As he checks out a tough-looking steed, he can already feel the mountain of yard work and cleaning waiting for him, and just as he's staring, someone nearby calls out, asking if he's looking for extra help. He got dragged off by that loudmouth who just offered his services, and Eichel's first instinct screamed that the guy reeked of trouble, because the stranger was a slave trader, and he wouldn't let up, yanking him along with non-stop pleading until Eichel finally agreed to listen. Before he could even protest, the trader flung his arms wide and greeted him with a big smile that instantly felt wrong. The moment he saw it, his stomach dropped, rows of cages packed with people. Exile fought with himself, desperate for help but sickened by the thought of owning slaves. The trader, totally blind to his turmoil, beamed and bragged about his choice stock, from tough warriors to stunning ornamental slaves. The so-called trader leaned in with a sneer and asked what kind of slave Exile was hunting. Then Exile snapped back fast, saying, No, I'm just looking for someone to help around the house, not a slave the traditional way." Hearing that, the trader's eyes flared bright. He snapped that a house helper had just revealed Exile was in luck, claimed he had the perfect candidates, then bolted off, yelling for the boy to wait a sec while Exile could only stand there, stunned, watching it all unfold. The candidate knelt in the dirt, shoulders sagging and head bowed. Then she lifted her face, and Esau froze for a beat, stunned by just how beautiful she was. He dropped to his knees and froze, staring like he couldn't help it. Then the young woman locked eyes with him and snapped, tired and sharp, that if he wasn't going to buy, he needed to stop staring. Esau jolted, blurted out an apology, and even he could tell that reaction caught her off guard. She couldn't wrap her head around his actions. What kind of monster apologizes to a slave like that? Meanwhile, Ishil steadied himself, telling himself she wasn't some mystery at all, just a beautiful girl named Sylvia, period. From the next cage over, 2 other male slaves stared and jeered. One sneered that it must feel great to be a display slave, locked away to sit silent as fancy decoration in some rich man's home, and the other just cackled along, cruel as ever. Just when their cruel mocking started to really sting, the slave trader burst back in bright smiling, waving the delay off like it meant nothing at all. He pointed at the young woman and fired the question at Ace Hal, and even made Sylvia confirm her name. He kept hammering his sales pitch, saying Sylvia had been in his shop for ages, meant to be just decoration, but she talks back, so he keeps getting her sold, only for her to be sent back again and again. With her eyes shut, one tear slid down her cheek, as he coldly described her like she was the real problem. With a cynical grin, he swatted aside her past like it didn't matter. He shrugged, dead serious. Business is business, and that's what happens to merchandise that won't sell. Then Sylvia's eyes snapped open in dread, and a hard voice cut through the room. Simply no. After he flatly refused, they lunged toward the girl through the cage bars. Then he snapped, "I'll take her," and the slave trader and Sylvia were left utterly speechless. The flustered trader snapped questions right away, demanding to know if he was sure and bragging that they had plenty of obedient slaves to spare, while he insisted they'd stay firm, because it wasn't right to toss someone away just because they'd been judged useless, and Sylvia sat there in silence, her face impossible to read. Once the deal was sealed, the slave trader bellowed from inside his shop, thanking Exile for the purchase as Exile and Sylvia turned and walked out. Now he was finally free from the shop, and he spun toward her with a blazing, open smile, then shot out his hand in a friendly greeting. With a bright grin, he said her name, Sylvia, "Nice to meet you." Iso's friendly reach got shut down by a hard, silent glare. Sylvia stared him down like fury had sprouted horns in her hair, and she completely ignored his outstretched hand. When he finally realized, Iso stumbled, unsure, and awkwardly blurted that they should head home. As they rode on, Sylvia sat tall on the horse, and Ace Howe led the way. Then she finally snapped, "I don't need your pity." Her icy words froze the moment, and as she strode ahead, all he could think was how brutally awkward everything had turned. When he stayed silent, Sylvia's resentment snapped into full-blown rage. She gripped her dress and accused him of being nice only until he got bored, swearing he'd end up exactly like every owner before him. The boy caught her accusing stare, and his face sank into gloom. He admitted he'd been trapped too, just recently set free, and if he ever got shoved into that nightmare again, he'd rather die behind bars. He replayed the brutal days of his confinement, locked in his room, told to stay hidden and never show his face, while no food ever made it in, leaving him drowning in total loneliness with nobody at his side. Even through all that pain, a tiny spark of resolve refused to die. He still remembered thinking, back then, that it was a damn good thing he hadn't died. That thought snapped him back to the present, and his face exploded into a wide, honest grin. He shot a hand toward Sylvia and told her he made it because a brand new world was waiting for him just beyond the door. His words sliced through the room and left Sylvia frozen for a beat. Then he pushed on, voice blazing with conviction, promising her he was sure that the exact same chance was waiting right there for her. She stammered, totally thrown off by how sincere he was, and the whole idea of something like that left her flustered, shaky, and unsure. He kept talking, voice gentle but unshakable, making sure she understood he hadn't bought her out of pity. His voice cracked with conviction as he finally laid out the real reason. He truly believes in her power and her heart, and he wants her by his side as a companion, ready to help guard their home. Her eyes snapped wide with pure disbelief. His confession hit her like nothing she'd ever known, so brutally sincere it stole every word from her mouth. She tilted her head, skepticism snapping back, and said, "Words are cheap." He didn't bat an eye, just grinned and nodded, vowing he'd grind to earn her trust. His vows hit Sylvia right in the heart. Her cheeks flushed with warmth, and her tough expression melted into a soft, gentle surprise as she gazed at him. After a long stretch of walking, he slammed on the brakes on a grassy path and declared, "We're here." He spun toward her with a bright, joyful grin, threw his arms wide, and proudly welcomed her into his home, while Sylvia froze, staring straight ahead with pure, jaw-dropping shock plastered on her face. Her shock made perfect sense. Right in front of them wasn't a warm welcome at all, but a two-story ruin, crumbling and choked in weeds, falling apart from total neglect. The disbelief slipped out of her as one thought hit hard. The cage would have been kinder. Their brand new life together was getting off to a disaster right at the doorstep. As Anhole got ready to clock in, he asked Sylvia if she could take over the housework. Then she shot back, "Do you mean I start with the cooking?" And Anhole practically stammered out an excited, "Yes, absolutely." With a confident grin, she told him to hand it to her, no stress. That rock-solid assurance hit Anhole hard, and for the first time he felt totally at ease trusting her. Her confidence didn't cook up a miracle. She set down a plate with a small, blackened lump that looked absolutely nothing like food. Staring at the plate in disbelief, Anhole could only wonder if this was even real cooking. Sylvia immediately burst into a flood of apologies, admitting she had no skill and swearing she'd get better. He quickly soothed her and told her not to sweat it. Taste beats looks every time. Then, with a shaky bite, he took the chance to taste, and Sylvia lit up, calling it a one-of-a-kind flavor, insisting nobody gets it perfect on the first try. With Emil finished, Anhold finally packed up and left for the day. She watched him disappear, a calm smile spreading across her face as she prayed Master Eichel would have a safe day. He'd handled this kind of formality before. He clocked her exhaustion, asked if she was really getting enough sleep, and demanded she just call him Aishal, but she waved it off and swore she was fine. Her exhaustion hit like a brick. Later that night, while she was prepping food, her grip faltered and the knife slipped, slicing her fingers open. That tiny injury lit a terrifying panic inside her, and her eyes shot wide as dread crashed over her face. She froze on the spot, panic hammering through her thoughts inside security, while Annel's words echoed, asterisk companion asterisk, a name she craved to earn, yet fear kept snarling that he could flip on her anytime, so she forced herself to snap out of it. In the blink of distraction, her grip gave out. The bowl slipped, hit the floor with a crash, and shattered into a million pieces. That brutal crash snapped Anhul into motion. He sprinted in and burst through the doorway, shouting her name like he couldn't breathe, demanding to know if she was okay. Her head drooped as she apologized for shattering what she swore was an important dish, but inside her chest caved in thoughts spiraling into pure despair, convinced this was the last mistake, the one that would make him walk away from her for good. He dropped to one knee beside her, his face soft and steady, no anger at all, then offered his own apology, snapping the blame onto himself for pushing her until she'd overworked. All he cared about was her, asking her straight if she was hurt. Sylvia just stared, completely stunned by how kind he was. His eyes snapped to a nearby cookbook, and he pitched the idea. At the very least, they could tackle it together and figure it out side by side. He flashed her a warm, bright smile and urged her to stop bottling everything up, just talk to him about anything. He reminded her how deep their bond runs, sealing the truth that they're companions through it all. He pitched a plan. This time they'd follow the recipe, and he'd step in to help her. Then, after a brief pause where she seemed to think it through, Sylvia finally nodded, soft as a whisper. When she finally said yes, it felt like a heavy stone vanished from both their chests, and the two of them looked up with bright, happy resolve shining in their eyes. They teamed up perfectly, cooked the whole meal without a hitch, and proudly slid out 2 finished plates like trophies. Anhul drops a plate of food on the table for Sylvia and declares he's heading back to his room. Then he's barely turned when she calls out, forcing him to stop and wait. She tells him slaves shouldn't share meals with their masters. That's just common sense. He waves it off with a dazzling grin, all smiles, insisting they should eat together anyway. His simple kindness hits Sylvia like a punch to the heart. She stammers, cheeks burning with pure embarrassment and shock, while he just watches, smugly satisfied with his choice. They slide into seats at opposite ends of this massive, sprawling dining table, and the huge gap between them hangs there, dead silent, awkward as hell. To snap the tension in the room, Anne thinks about asking whether she's gotten used to living there, but she stalls, terrified the question could hurt. So instead, he grabs a safer route, flashing a bright smile and blurting out how shocked he was by the mansion's huge size. She admits it's huge, but says it feels kinda battered and worn, like it's seen some miles. To her, it's still cozier than all those flashy estates she's used to, and as she keeps talking, she can't help thinking. There's only so much you can truly describe it like that before the words run out. Her comment draws a small laugh out of him, and just like that, the last bit of tension between them slips away. As they keep eating, the room fills with soft clinks of cutlery, and Anhul steals a glance at her, eyes thoughtful, expression heavy with questions, then says nothing. Sylvia tilts her gaze up and flashes a warm, real smile, admitting this might be the most fun she's ever had. Right then, Anhul feels a wave of quiet happiness, knowing he really managed to put that smile on her face. After a while, Anhul gets ready to bolt from the mansion, backpack and all, and tells Sylvia he's heading for the mountain behind the estate to mine for ore. But as he starts walking off, she yells from the doorway, begging him to stop and take something with him. A neatly wrapped lunchbox gets shoved into his hands, and Sylvia leans in to tell him he's going to be starving the moment he starts working. He flashes a bright, grateful smile, thanks her, and admits his mining skills have gotten a little better. With his pickaxe hooked over his shoulder, Sylvia pauses just a beat, then sends him off with a bright, heartfelt wish for a safe day. Her worry spikes, then she blurts his name, I shall, and you can hear the fear she never got to say. He spins away from their home, sets his jaw like he means it, and shouts back, yeah, I'm awesome. Later on, a huge pile of glittering dark ore sits in front of a stunned Sylvia, and Annel's voice note says they struck gold, mining so much they're set to earn a solid chunk of money. He plopped on the floor by his haul, stared up at her, and blurted out his plan to sell the ore tomorrow, then asked if she wanted to come with him, leaving Sylvia stunned and wondering if he was really serious. He flashes her a bright wink and tells her, yeah, you're coming, like it's destiny. Then he leans in and says she's been grinding nonstop, so tomorrow they're taking a little break together. The next day, they burst into the roaring city of St. Lyria, where streets thrummed with people and towering stone buildings loomed on every side. Side by side on the cobblestone street, he lays out his plan. He'll dash off to buy a carriage, while she stays behind to handle the shopping, and with a soft, warm smile, Sylvia nods along. He shoves a heavy pouch into Sylvia's hands and tells her it's more than enough to cover everything. Then he adds, smiling, that she can keep any leftover for herself. Sylvia clutches the pouch, eyes popping open in total disbelief, and asks, "Wait, isn't this way too much?" As she strides through the city streets, she keeps locking eyes on that pouch, shocked that Anhole calls this a small sum, let alone a salary. A few hours whip by. Once Sylvia snags the final thing on their list, she turns to the shopkeeper and thanks them with real heart. Her eyes snap to a gorgeous new dress in the shop window, and for a second she's smiling, then it curdles fast. Money Anhole had given her clutched in her hand. She shakes her head and spits the thought into the air. A useless person like her doesn't deserve something that beautiful. Suddenly, Anhole's voice slices through Sylvia's thoughts. He jabs a finger at the dress and declares, "I'll take it," and Sylvia just freezes, stunned and unable to speak. Clutching her shopping bag by the handles, she can't shake the unease, like she knows she doesn't deserve something this beautiful. Anhole stood beside their brand-new horse-drawn carriage and soothed her, insisting she show up for him every single day, because she'd more than earned at least this much. His reassurance hits and a sweet blush flames up her cheeks, so overwhelmed with gratitude, she thanks him from the bottom of her heart, and Anhole only smiles back, sure that dress is made for her. Once they're done shopping, Anhole pushes them to head back, until Sylvia spots the packed cobblestone street below and realizes they can't squeeze through to the main road that way. Right then, a bright young woman nearby lights up with excitement, pointing hard into the distance and yelling at everyone to look. Anhole and Sylvia snap around, both like, "What the heck is going on over there?" The whole crowd is roaring because Sir Dalmas is riding in victorious knight commander on horseback, and the moment they see him, the people on the stairs light up and recognize him instantly. He knows it all makes perfect sense now that he's become a commander after being granted the legendary Heaven's Thunder Swordsman class. He decides teaming up with his brother is just asking for disaster, so he grabs Sylvia's hand, and Anhole hurries her toward the exits, praying they'll disappear into the crowd before Dalmas clocks them. But it's already too late. Dalmas, perched on his mount, locks eyes with Anhole, a smug grin blooming as he says Anhole's doing just fine, and Anhole just quietly notes that his brother looks every bit as healthy as ever. That casual greeting is a trap. Dalmas leans in, and his voice turns pure venom as he spits that Anhole should have just died, calling him a disgrace to the Belbalab family. Those cruel words hit him like a punch, leaving him frozen, no sound, no reply, while beside him Sylvia's face twists with worry as she watches him get humiliated. A noble woman traveling with Dalmas leans in and asks if he recognizes the boy, and Dalmas scoffs like, "That worthless commoner, get real." But the insult yanks the memory clean into the light, back when Anhole was still his brother's name, and his brother had been kind, even protective. And when Dalmas sees that cold cruelty on display, Sylvia's smile dies, replaced by a hard, freezing glare. She steps up jaw tight, then straight up says, "Wait." She strides between the hole and the night, calls him out, and insists that even if he's a commander, she won't let him insult this man. Her voice cuts through the noise, steady as a sword, declaring to everyone that Lord Ishmael isn't just kind, he's nobler than anyone else. She squares up to the mounted commander and snarls at him to take back every word he just spat out. Dalmas sneers at her arrogance like a slave's ever meant to talk back, then taunts her, asking if she truly knows what happens to anyone who dares defy a noble. Unflinching, Sylvia meets his gaze and tells him, straight to his face, that she understands perfectly and she's ready for it. She plants her feet in the dirt, refusing to flinch, and her defiance instantly yanks the attention of a gleaming female knight. She reins her horse to a stop right beside Dalma's. The weight of her sacrifice slams into Anhole's chest. She risked everything for him, and now the cruelty meant for a slave lands on her master. He can't let her take that alone. Stop. He barks, launching his arm out to shield Sylvia from the blow. He plants himself like a wall between Sylvia and his brother, gripping his staff defensively, and locks his jaw with fresh resolve. He's done shrinking in front of someone like Dalmas. The female knight stands by Dalmas and watches the boy's sudden bravery. Then, with a sharp, unimpressed smirk, Dalmas leans down and taunts Anhole, asking if he's really ready to die in the slave's place. Patience snapped. Dalmas shoved the tip of his sword to Anhole's throat, called him a disgrace for sparing a slave, and vowed to end him fast. Anhole's eyes blow wide as the cold steel sits inches from his skin, right there, waiting, while behind him Sylvia's voice shatters as she screams his name, her hands clasped tight and wet with tears. Fear finally breaks, and a soft, sorrowful calm settles in. She shuts her eyes, one tear slips down her cheek, and a gentle, resigned smile curls across her lips. With a sharp, dismissive scoff, Dalmas drops his weapon like it's nothing, then spits that his brother isn't even worth dirtying his blade. He swings his mount around and signals his companion, "We're out." He watches them fade away, and relief crashes through him so hard he nearly topples. He grips his chest to calm his pounding heart, while Sylvia calls out his name, her voice thick with worry. She snatches him by the shoulders, eyes blazing with relief and a warning glare, and demands to know why he'd pull a stunt like that, because she hisses, a slave like her is replaceable. She stared at him, stunned by his reckless choice, but before she could even react, he just shrugged and said risking his life for her felt completely natural. Then he shot them a bright, earnest smile and held out his hand like, so we're not companions anymore, huh? She stared at his outstretched hand, and the word companions hit her like a brand new heartbeat, echoing in her mind like she'd never heard it before. Tears flooded her eyes as it hit her. This boy was the first person ever to stake his life for her, and she couldn't stop realizing how different he was. Overwhelmed by emotion, she teared up and lit up with a radiant, heartfelt smile as she poured out her feelings. Their hands clasped tight, like the world just clicked into place, and he'd swear they'd head back home together. Later, tucked inside their brand new home, Sylvia stared at the feast she'd cooked and smiled, content to finally feel what it meant to be companions. She suddenly snapped back to reality and realized she'd cooked way too much, all because she kept picturing Anil, yet warmth flooded her chest as the thought hit, I'm home. Right then, she swore she'd devote her whole life to him, because he was the kind of man who'd risk everything for her. Anhold stormed back with a brand new young guy in tow, smiling like he had great news. Then he blurted out that he was ready to introduce their newest companion, Bickle. Her calm didn't even last a breath. Sylvia's shocked voice erupted from inside the house, demanding who that man was and whether Ann Hull was already sneaking around. A brand new face in the household flashes a gentle smile, hand pressed to his heart, and says, I'm Bickle, you're in my care now, starting today. His arrival hits like a split-second shockwave. One cheerful woman grins, saying things are about to get wild, while Bickle just shrugs and vows to do his best. But Sylvia freezes in disbelief, blurting for Anhold to hold on. A few hours earlier, everything looked totally different. Sylvia stormed up to Anil and demanded to know why he hadn't bought the weed killer he was supposed to, and he just caved in, admitting that, yeah, he meant to, but his plans had blown up. He kept staring at the never-ending garden chores, realizing he had to earn a living and couldn't keep dumping that weight on Sylvia. Then, mid-thought, someone behind him noticed his face and said it looked like he was in trouble. That voice belonged to the same old slave trader. Anhol clocked him instantly. With a smug, knowing look, the man said Anhol looked just like Sylvia, then pointed out how well she'd handled the strange new housework. The trader just shrugged and said the obvious. So many weed killers like Anhol had to mean he was holed up in some giant mansion. Then he leaned in and asked whether the two of them could really handle all the cleaning and guarding by themselves, basically planting the idea that Anhol needed reinforcements. With the demand made crystal clear, the trader struck a dramatic pose and launched his pitch, then dangled a special slave just for Anhol, claiming they'd help crush his problems. He stepped up and bragged to Bickle that this young man could handle gardening, farm work, anything they needed. Then the trader grinned and promised to sell him for a bargain price. Bickle shoved himself back into the present, and the Hull hesitated. Bickle tried to explain that he only does gardening, but the trader cut him off fast, glaring and snapping that his honesty was exactly why he wouldn't be selling anything. The trader brushed off the interruption, flashed a practiced grin, and pivoted right back to Anhol, calling Bickle a special slave saved only for the best of the best. Then he pushed for an answer on the spot, forcing Anhol to weigh the offer while Bickle stood there, shoulders sagging and watching in silence. He shoots out a hand, grinning as he introduces himself and loudly declares, from this day on, Bickle isn't a slave, he's a comrade. Bickle's caught off guard, but he straightens up and tells Anhol, Master Eichel, his own name, promising he'll do his best. Anhol's warm gesture makes the new guy stare in confusion, wondering what comrade even means. He lays out the whole arrangement for Sylvia, and she just deadpans that Anhol is terrible at negotiating. You can clearly tell it's real, they're shorthanded, but instead of panicking, they grin, treating it like a lucky break to welcome even more comrades. His spark shot right back. Then he turned to Sylvia and swore he'd do his absolute best for her too. But Sylvia, still flustered from being left alone with Anhol, snapped that he was totally wrong. She blurts out that she's a slave too, just like him, because she clocked how he was talking normally to their master. Before Bickle can even process it, Anhol cuts in and declares slavery doesn't matter in his house, everyone's equal, and that line leaves Bickle completely speechless. Realizing night was creeping in, Angel tells Bickle his duties start tomorrow. Bickle just nods like he already knew. He asks where he should go, and Anhold shrugs and tells him to head outside. Slaves are meant to sleep out there, so Bickle nods and gets ready to slip out for the night. In the blink of an eye, a hand rockets out and clamps onto his shoulder, yanking the fight right out of him. Anhold blocked his path with a grin and said, Since Bickle stepped into my mansion, you're an equal comrade, no way you're sleeping outside, then waved him over to pick any room he wanted. Bickle froze, protested that as a slave, a private room was totally unthinkable. As he stammers in pure confusion, Sylvia grins like she already knows, then tells him, "Trust me, you'll get used to this new life sooner than you think." He couldn't wrap his head around his new master's mindset. Anhol's way of thinking and throwing money around was downright bizarre, with zero common sense about how to treat a slave. Anhol just grinned, said the room arrangements were settled, wished everyone good night, and the others followed suit, leaving Vikkel stuck with one chilling thought. He'd walked into a very, very strange mansion. He spun toward Sylvia, repeating that Anhol was a strange master, yet his gentle, knowing smile said it all. Sylvia nodded back, admitting she'd been thrown off at first too, before realizing that this wasn't a trick at all, it was just who Anhol was. Meanwhile, Anhol strode through the crumbling mansion halls, alone with his thoughts, wondering what tomorrow would bring, and owning up to how weird it was to call his slaves comrades. Bickle stayed quiet and heavy with worry, one crushing thought stuck in his head. His mind snapped back to Sylvia. She had her own view of her master, and she swore by one simple truth: Anhol was the one who saved her. She remembered the night she hit rock bottom, seconds from being tossed aside forever, when Anhol didn't just take her in, he threw himself in harm's way to keep her safe. So she was 100% sure there was no other master in the whole world like him. He was the only one who truly saw her, flaws, fear, and all, and still loved her exactly the way she was. Hearing that, or maybe trusting his own gut, Bickle's face snapped into determination. He pressed a hand to his chest and swore he'd give it everything, because falling short would feel like stealing his own truth. He stared out across the mansion grounds, still stunned that a man like him, sold into slavery, had been welcomed with open warmth, and right then and there, he vowed to work hard enough to repay that kindness. The very next morning, Anhol yawned and chirped a bright good morning, and right then, Bickle felt that fresh, new uncertainty start creeping in. He strides up to Bickle, dirt-caked from hours of wrestling that overgrown garden, and blurts out, worried, "What's wrong?" Bickle jerks in surprise, thrusting his filthy hands up and telling Anhol to back off. Then Anhol only smiles and thanks him for the hard work. He brushes off the dirt, breaks into a warm grin, and thanks Bickle again for everything he's done, and it floors him. Because Bickle realizes this is the first time a master has ever praised him, given him his own space, or treated him like an equal. This guy is downright weird, but there's something deeper brewing here. It all clicks into a rock-solid decision. Bickle grips Anhol's hand, and in complete silence, swears he'll follow him. Soon after, inside the house, Anhol grins and declares breakfast is ready. Then Bickle just stands there, frozen in disbelief at the massive mountain of pancakes on the table. He stares at the mountain of food and demands an explanation, so Sylvia snaps back that he's earned this hunger with his morning grind. Then she chimes in, reminding Bickle they've both got work left and they better go all in. Bickle's face brightens with cheerful determination. He nods and agrees they should eat what Sylvia cooked. Anhol jumps in too, saying everyone's grinding, so he won't lag behind. He'll work his way to his meal. Once everything's set, the three of them crowd around the table. Then Anhol throws the signal, and the whole room lights up with pure joy. After a hearty breakfast, Anhol fires up his plans for the day, jotting down his chores and putting gardening and cleaning right at the top of the list. Right before he can go on, his companions bulldoze over him. Sylvia steps in with total confidence, taking charge of all the housework and cooking and swearing they'll have an amazing meal, while Bickle lunges for the garden, bragging that he'll turn it into the finest in the whole country. Hearing their blazing promises, Anhol gets hit with something warm. Gratitude surges through him as he realizes just how lucky he is to have comrades he can truly trust. He shoots his fist into the air, grinning like he's about to ignite the world, and rallies his fresh companions, saying they'll all give it their best together. Bickle stands shoulder to shoulder with calm determination, and Sylvia keeps her arms crossed, watching him with a look that screams she's thinking hard. So they jump right into it. Anhol hits the water to fish, Sylvia sweeps the house like a mission, and Bickle starts digging into the garden soil, hands busy and focused. His hard work pays off fast. Right after a moment, that wooden bucket finally overflows with another huge cat for the day. He starts weighing their evening meal options, his brain racing through a lineup of mouthwatering fish, sashimi, stewed goodness, maybe even something wild like Munier. Just as he's scanning the menu, a jarring notification snaps his focus. New skill added to his abilities, and now he's left scrambling to figure out when and how it even happened. He stared at the win and couldn't shake it. There was no monster he'd truly beaten, no big feats at all, just the same production skills over and over, and then it hit him. Maybe that repetition was carving something new into him, and the meaning of it landed like a gut punch. With his hard-earned haul in hand, he hustles back to their little house, and a warm welcome hits him the moment he steps inside. Inside, he calls out to Sylvia and tells her he already made a list of veggies for her to grab tomorrow. then she casually cuts him off, saying she doesn't need it at all, and the shock hits Bickle and Anhul so hard they just stare at her, totally lost. A smug grin cracked across his face as he blurted out his big new plan, fueled by a skill he just uncovered. He swore he's not buying vegetables anymore, he's going to grow them right from the field. His proclamation hits the room like a thunderclap, then Bickle and Sylvia explode in one stunned, disbelief-filled shout. Standing there with Anhul and Sylvia, Bickle bluntly declares he's about to try farming, and Anhul's eyes go huge, asking, wide-eyed, if they're really going to make a go of it. Anhul goes from shocked to thrilled in a blink, insisting Bickle must have grown up around farm work, and Bickle grins and confirms he's been raised by a farming family, so Anhul exhales in relief, calls him dependable, and practically begs him to teach him how to work the field right away. His sudden urgency whips Bickle off guard, and he blurts, "Are you serious, right now?" Then a whole beaming grin bursts across his face as he confirms it instantly, no hesitation at all. As the two boys rush away, Sylvia keeps her eyes on them, a soft smile tugging at her lips, wondering quietly if they'll make it through all right. Their destination loomed ahead, a massive manor house perched right at the edge of the woods. They head straight into a huge, open stretch of land fenced in simple lines, and Anhul squints into the glare, checks the ground, and announces the space is perfect for what they need. Once he picked the perfect spot, he turned to them and demanded, "So what do we do first?" Bickle popped up with 2 shovels and said the first move is simple, dig into the ground. With their path cleared, they both lunged into action, slamming their shovels into the stubborn, overgrown earth. After he flips another chunk of earth, Bickle stops mid-work, leans in, and explains what comes next. Then he hammers the new soil with a hoe to get it ready. They keep working, blasting the dirt clumps apart with hoses now, and Bickle spots that they're only about halfway through, so Anhul wipes the sweat off his brow and groans that this job is brutal. Then his eyes snap wide as it finally clicks. He stared at the newly turned earth, and pride swelled in his chest as it finally began to look like a real field, until Bickle, the straight shooter, cut in with one cold truth. They weren't finished yet, and they still had to take a few more steps before the seeds could go into the ground. Curious, Anhul snapped, "So what's next?" And Bickle laid out their plan, toss lime onto the soil to push the vegetables into full strength, only to leave Anhul frozen for a beat, brow knotted as he blurted, "Do we even have lime?" His mind snapped to that old wooden warehouse on the property, and right out of nowhere, a wild idea hit him like lightning. Hidden deep inside were several huge sacks, stuffed with rough, chalky chunks of limestone. He jabbed at the sacks and fired a question at Bickle. Would this limestone, like some original stash pulled straight from the warehouse's guts, be enough? Bickle nodded and snapped that it would work perfectly, then ordered them to start crushing it right away for spreading, and Bickle backed it up. They slammed the stones with brutal, heavy strikes, smashing them down into fine, usable powder. With buckets brimming to the top with crushed lime, the two of them marched across the field and methodically tossed the chalky white powder over the dark soil. Once the job was done, Bickle called out the last step before the planting started, mix leaf mold into the soil, and the second Anhul heard it, he shot off to the mountain behind the property to grab some. He swings into the forest work, hacking up deep, dark leaf mold with a shovel while Bickle stands by, gripping a wheelbarrow, ready to haul it all away. Above them, a flock of birds glided across the sky, and they stood there with their wheelbarrow finally packed. Once that last ingredient hit the pile, their field was secured for good. He and Bickle step up to the fresh, newly turned soil. The rows are lined up perfectly, ready for what comes next, and Anhul grins as he declares the job finished, while Bickle nods hard like, "Yep, that's solid work." When dusk rolls in, he clocks that night is nearly here and tells them to pick up the job tomorrow, and Bickle nods, backing the plan. The next morning, Anhul drops to his knees at the field's edge while Bickle watches from a few steps away, and then, from Anhul's stretched-out hand, a gentle, sparkling light spills into the air. He lifts his eyes with a confident smirk, thrilled by what his mysterious power just did, and in his head he's like, "Yeah, this is perfect." He stares at the house, already bracing for the shock that's going to hit everyone tomorrow. Meanwhile, Bickle, ready to go buy seeds, slams to a stop, locks eyes on a lone little sprout in an endless field, and can't help but wonder if it's just a wheeze. He clocks his companion's confusion, and the hull rolls in like a calming promise, "You're fine." Then he thrusts his hands forward, lets the glow spark back to life, and tells Bickle, "Watch me." In a blinding burst, power rips from his hands and storms across the rose-covered soil. Then plants explode upward, shooting into full bloom in the blink of an eye, and Bickle yells, stunned out of his mind. Right in front of them, a whole field now bursts with ripe vegetables. Bickle freezes, staring like he can't even breathe, stunned that they showed up out of nowhere in a single moment. As Bickle asks where they are, like they've been ripped out of reality, the whole room whips toward him, and he grins. He tells them this is the cultivation skill's power, something he only realized he'd gained 2 days ago while fishing. He sealed it with a calm, "That's right," and Bickle, still stunned from the way those vegetables had shot up overnight, finally got it. That was why Anhole had insisted on planting a whole field so suddenly, and the outcome was absolutely mind-blowing. With the field overflowing in bright produce, he grinned and blurted, "All right, harvest time." They wrapped it up in a blink, standing there with baskets stuffed to the brim with fresh veggies, and Bickle could barely process that it was done already. Back inside, they handed Sylvia the bounty, and Anil said it was all because Bickle's help in the field finally paid off, plus his brand new skill. Sylvia lit up and joked that now they'd be set for veggies for a while, since she'd stashed the leftovers in a magic refrigerator that keeps food fresh as long as it's fed magic on the regular. After all their hard work, she flashed a bright wink and swore she'd match their effort too, because tonight they weren't just eating, they were feasting. True to her word, the three of them hurried to a table piled high with food and drinks, and they dug in together for a hard-earned celebration. Outside the giant residence, a brand new project was moments away from being brought up and debated. Anil stumbled on Sylvia and Bickle, both looking wrecked, and when he demanded to know what happened, Bickle was so rattled he couldn't even get the words out. He snapped his head toward Sylvia, and she burst out her idea. After that stunning vegetable field, she wanted them to plant a flower garden too. Anhole waited for a beat, then nodded, saying the mansion was huge but felt empty, and yeah, the scenery mattered. Her demands didn't stop. She demanded the fence repaired, the ugly gate redone, and every little upgrade she could think of, all in one breath. And as she kept rattling off chores, Bickle panicked and blurted that sure, a garden was one thing, but fixing fences and gates was beyond what he could pull off by himself. Then Anhole's face darkened as the workload piled higher and higher. He stood there with Bickle and Sylvia, scanning the property like he was reading danger in the walls, and when he admitted things were heating up, he snapped that their security just wasn't enough anymore. Then, with a sharp, determined stare, he said it was time to bring in a new companion. His choice steered him straight to a place he knew, and the moment he walked in, the portly top-hat owner greeted him like a showman. "Oh, well, well, Sir Ishal," he chirped. "It's so good to see you." The broker wasted zero time, grilling Ahal on what kind of person he wanted this round, so Ahal shot back that he needed someone who could repair fences and gates. With a smug grin, the broker swore he had the perfect guy for the job, then flicked his hand and beckoned the hole deeper into the building. He swept in a quiet, dark-haired young man who sat there like he owned the silence, and the broker grinned as he claimed the kid was Lord Carpenter, skills so unreal they weren't even exaggerating when they called him the best craftsman in the whole town. When Anhole closed in on the craftsman, he flashed a friendly smile and asked straight out if the man could handle repairs for houses and everything like that, only to get nothing back but a calm, unblinking stare. He clocked how quiet the man was, but it didn't stop him. He decided on the spot to hire him, and the broker lit up at how fast everything clicked, thanked Ann Halfer for the purchase, and promised to start the procedures right away. While he waited, a fresh thought hit him. More people were pouring into the estate, and Sylvia was getting buried under the workload alone, so he decided he'd better hire someone to help her too. Right when his mind was drifting, a hand snapped into view and grabbed his arm. He got yanked backward out of nowhere, and the shock punched through him as he gasped in panic. He got spun around, and right then his eyes locked on a small kid trapped behind metal bars, tears carving their cheeks as big, desperate eyes pleaded from the other side, one trembling hand reaching out. "Father." The child cried just that one word, yet it threw an unbelievable question into the air. Was this really Ishal's secret child? In a dim little place, a small, tearful girl with light, wavy hair stretches her hand through the cage bars, eyes locked on an empty velvet seat. Then a shaky whisper tears out of her throat, "Papa." He leans in and tries to straighten it all out, wearing a hurt expression as he insists he isn't her father. Her hope snaps like glass, and she screams with raw, hopeless despair. Anhole freezes hard, guilt crashing in as he realizes his denial only made everything worse, and now he scrambles, panicking for anything he can say to comfort her. Her screams yank his attention, and a burly guard stomps over, roaring at her to shut it. He towers over the cage, roaring for the little girl to shut up and stop crying, but the tears just won't stop pouring from her. Inho stands there, staring at the scene, and pure worry twists across his face as the poor, distraught child crumples in front of him. The chaos erupts, and the slave trader comes barreling in, rattled and panicked, blurting sorry after sorry while he demands to know what went wrong. He snaps at his guard, Vivian, the second they disturb the guests, then spins to Anhole with a practiced grin, straight up calling him out as he watches the girl, and insisting it's totally, absolutely no problem. He leans in like they're sharing a secret, saying the girl is usually as calm as a pond, until Anne Hull's kind face jogged memories and dragged up thoughts of her parents, and right then, the traitor clocks it, a golden business opportunity. When they corner her with questions about her parents, the traitor finally admits they're gone, and that the child has zero other relatives to take her in, so as she slumps, alone and heartbroken, behind her cage bars, she's trapped with nobody in the world. A slime-wise slave traitor clocks his opening and leans in with a sickly sweet voice, pushing his luck until he's begging Anne Hull straight to her face. Can someone like him really grasp how deep that girl's loneliness runs and dare to turn down the chance to save her? He leans in and says she's a quick learner, but she just stays quiet, while his face turns thoughtful as he weighs the whole proposition. Her little face is a total heartbreak. Tears spill and pool in her huge eyes as she frantically tries to wipe them away with trembling fists. Through the cold iron bars, he stared back as everyone watched the crying girl, masking his own feelings behind a perfectly blank expression, like nothing was happening at. This gets hammered into place with pure resolve, because someone just made the call and there's no turning back. With her chains gone, the girl jolts upright and beams with overwhelming gratitude, thanking him over and over. Then Anne Hull hits her with a shocking question, asking if he can be trusted to take care of another child too. All right after he slips out of the market, he grins at his new companions on the cobblestone street and tells them, with a bright smile, to get along from here on out. The girl shoots a gesture at the quiet, dark-haired boy beside her, calling him Vivian, and then he straightens up and greets Anne Hull with a crisp, formal bow. She turns to Vivian and gives him a polite, "Nice to meet you," but he only shoots back a quiet, non-committal grunt, eyes still shut, like he's barely in the room. Her shoulders sag with disappointment as she watches them get turned away coldly, even as home claims it's the right-away kind of closeness, and he can't help thinking it's going to be tough, wondering how they'll ever find a way to bond. Just as he's pulled into the past, Vivi, this tiny little girl, yanks his sleeve, looks up, and softly but firmly says she's hungry. Enho shot them a nod and guided the two kids straight to a nearby little eatery, a charming two-story spot that looked warm before they even stepped inside. The moment they step inside, Vivi's eyes blow wide and her mouth hangs open as she takes it all in, looking like she's about to apologize for the delay, utterly stunned by everything in front of her. Moments later, a heaping plate slams onto the table. Someone calls out the kids' order: a giant hamburger steak drenched in sauce, a heap of spaghetti on the side, and a mound of rice piled high. The three of them huddle around a wooden table, and Vivi's eyes go wide as she gapes at the food like it's magic. She's never tasted anything this fancy before. Anne Hull just smiles and tells them to dig in before the meal turns cold. She digs in right away, cheeks puffing as she gushes that it's absolutely delicious, and between bites she keeps pushing Anne Hull to try it too, while he stares at his curry and silently admits to himself it's been way too long since he's had a real. The taste of the meal hits Vivi like a punch, sweet joy turning into a sharp, burning memory of bars, plain bread, and that relentless, gnawing hunger that never let up. Tears brim in her eyes as she remembers how much she despised living like that, day after day, until a soft voice slices through her spiraling thoughts, telling her not to worry. She tilts her gaze up and sees him smiling gently, and he reassures her with a promise: starting now, she can eat as much as she wants. With tears of joy streaming down her face, Vivi blurts out that she can't believe he really means it. Then, all smiles, she promises him he can take as much as he wants, and that sweet, innocent kindness leaves Anne Hull. At the restaurant table, Vivian, the quiet butler, stops mid-bite, lifts his gaze, and fixes everyone with a stern look before firing off his heartfelt gratitude. Across from him, that reserved young man digs into his food, and he can't help thinking this might take forever before he finally cracks. At another table, a friendly guy and gal keep their eyes on the group, and the woman leans in to say she can see Vivian buzzing with all those lively people. Now she just wants him to realize he belongs soon. And Hall's attention snaps back to his own table when he spots Vivi leaving her veggies untouched, and the kid is grinning like crazy, begging for pudding. "Can't I have some?" And Hall laughs and agrees at once, then offers to order even more. Then he shoots a glance at Vivian's plate and realizes, yep, the vegetables are untouched for him too. Anne Hull opens his mouth to say something, but stops cold because he fears a sudden word could snap the calm quiet of the butler. Before Anne Hull can even think, Vivian spins around, this time to Vivian himself, and calmly tells her, "Just eat your vegetables." She jolts her head up, shocked, then fires back, saying they're bitter and she can't stand them. Vivian snatches her plate and zips through the leftover veggies, snapping them into a grin like she's casting a tiny mealtime spell. He flashes Vivi a playful little arrangement, and her eyes go wide with pure shock. Then she smirks and says she'll be heartbroken if he doesn't eat every last one. Still, Vivi hesitates, then gives in to his pleading and asks, "Are you really serious?" With a stubborn pout, she grabs her fork and starts chewing down the vegetables, while Anhol just watches her with a smug, satisfied grin. With his sweet little plan working, Vivian finally gets that tiny, please smile moment. Grace's lips twitch into the faintest smile as he watches her dig in. He slowly rests a hand on the child's head, and as he murmurs her name, or maybe even gifts it to her, Vivian, his face melts into warmth. She lights up instantly, flashes a peace sign, and bursts into a cheerful laugh, declaring that Vivi is such a good girl. He just kept watching, grinning to himself, thinking, she's doing great right now. Their next stop is a huge, fancy house, their brand new base of operations, as the crew keeps growing bigger by the day. Inside, Vivi's eyes go wide at the huge hallway, and he throws his hands out like, go on, pick any room you want, as he tells his two new companions. As Vivi rockets toward the door, she blurts out that she wants the biggest room, but just as she's about to explore, familiar faces crash the moment. Anhold turns and sees Bickle and Sylvia, smiling like they've been waiting for him. He stands beside Vivian while Bickle and Sylvia close in, and Bickle clocks the situation fast. This is their new companion. Vivi the kid whips her gaze to the new arrivals, then snaps her eyes to the silent butler beside her, head tilting in pure confusion as she blurts, "Wait, who's that little girl?" He breaks into a soft smile and starts spilling everything to his friends, every twist, every detail of what just happened. Just as he's about to wrap it up, Sylvia flashes a knowing smile and tells a mildly baffled Bickle that what he just did is exactly the kind of kindness Anil always pulls off. Bickle grips Vivian's hand hard, beams a mile wide, and practically begs to team up with him, while the butler stays stone calm and returns the same polite enthusiasm. Hearing that, Anhol's face lights up, and he praises Bickle as rock solid. Then Bickle proudly says he can take on any carpentry job that comes his way, and Anhol confirms he already knew the truth. Bickle used to be a carpenter. Nearby, Sylvia beams down at Vivi with a warm smile and calls them a cute little helper, and that fires Vivi up. Fists clenched, eyes bright, Vivi promises they'll work hard. Sylvia is thrilled by that drive and immediately agrees. A huge grin lights up her face as she officially welcomes the child, still convinced they're named Vivian, and then she laughs, saying having them around feels like she just gained a little sister. The kid lifts her gaze and happily nods, then blurts "Mama," and that surprise title hits Sylvia like a punchline, making her fluster hard as she stammers that she was meant to be called Big Sister. Brand new morning kicks off at the grand, well-appointed mansion, and inside, Anhold Velvet welcomes Sylvia, the child Vivi, and butler Vivian, then lays out exactly what they're doing today. He lays out the jobs with razor-sharp instructions. Sylvia and Vivian are ordered to set out with flower seeds, and the moment he says it, they both light up and gladly agree. Then he swivels to Bickle and hands him the task of prepping the flower bed, and Bickle jumps at it without hesitation. With Annel's orders ringing in her ears, Sylvia takes the money from Annel, ready to blow it on their shopping trip. He flashes her a warm smile and tells her she can do whatever she wants with the leftover money. With the morning's plan locked in, Anhol lights up the group with a cheerful rallying cry, then everyone fires back with an enthusiastic, ready-to-give-it-their-all agreement. While everyone else bolts out, Bickle and Vivian Butler stay behind, rolling up their sleeves and gearing up for their garden duties. Meanwhile, Anhol swivels his focus to the vegetable patch he planted the night before, while Sylvia and Vivian watch him from the window, and he channels everything he's got, invoking his one-of-a-kind cultivation skill. Power surges through the earth, and in the blink of an eye, massive rows of cabbages explode into existence. Anhol just stands there, grinning at the jackpot harvest, ready to rip in and haul another huge batch. Those vegetables came out massive, crammed tight into a huge wicker basket, like pure proof of his insane, unstoppable skill. He pauses to soak it all in, this huge land, a comfy home, plenty of food to live on his own, and friends who bring nonstop life, until he realizes he's finally found real, rock-solid happiness. He curled up in a giant basket, sound asleep, dreaming of the calm, slow life he'd always wanted, maybe a ranch, maybe an orchard, until a bright, cheerful voice snapped him out of it. Sylvia's back. Vivi, the young kid, spotted her and shouted a happy welcome. Their arrival snapped Bickle's attention like a trap. He stared at their fresh new clothes in total disbelief and demanded, "What is going on?" Vivi and Sylvia looked stunned at his reaction, and Vivi shot back that they were meant to buy flower seeds, but since there was cash left over, they'd gone shopping instead, no question, just shopping. She flicked her hand toward a nearby table piled with shopping bags, reminding him a salad, then stopped short, because they wanted to use the rest of the money. With a smug, triumphant grin, Vivi snapped that they'd just followed his word, and that was that. Now wide awake and having caught the whole exchange, he just grinned, warm and confident, then told them, "As long as you're having fun, that's all that matters." Bickle just couldn't wrap his head around how calm he sounded. Then the guy spotted someone missing and demanded to know where Rhodes was. Exile said the butler had already slipped back to his room, and Vivi and Sylvia immediately traded those mischievous looks like they were about to stir up trouble. Their weird expressions made sense the second Vivian smiled, and then she revealed she'd already bought an outfit for the cell, daring him to try it on. Moments later, he popped back out in a sleek new jacket, struck a cool pose, and admitted it actually looked pretty damn good. Then Vivi lit up and swore her fashion was flawless, making Sylvia crack up and leaving Bickle completely stunned. Her excitement still burned bright. Then she blurted out Ace, Hal, and Bickle's names, ordering them to look at this right now. With a dramatic flourish, she and Sylvia snapped into matching poses, and Vivi grandly blared that it was time for the Sylvia and Vivian fashion show, leaving Ace, Hal, and Bickle completely stunned. The fashion show is roaring to life. Sylvia, swaying in a flowing white dress, winks at Vivian and shoots him a thank you, while Vivian, now in a sharp blouse and skirt, hears the praise that the outfit fits him perfectly. Vivi, wrapped in a floral robe, practically yells for everyone to stare, and another woman in a sleek dark dress just smiles, calm as ever. Yet they all groan that Rhodes isn't here to see the spectacle, not realizing he's standing right there with them. A few hours later, Angel finally cracks it. He realizes exactly where the road has been headed. Right as Vivian calls out the next model, he clocks the time and realizes dinner is almost here. He glances at the clock, already late, and gives a tired little smile, then urges them to pick up the show tomorrow, and Bickle instantly blurts out in shock at how late it is. As the night slips away, the next morning comes creeping over the manor. Angel stretches hard the moment he wakes up in his room, then decides to sprint straight into checking his status. Right then, a notification blasts onto his screen, Carpentry, Level 1, so he just stares in shock, completely thrown off by what happened. Hyped up by this brand new skill, he storms outside and spots a wide-open patch of ground, then decides it's the perfect battlefield to try it out. He lifts his hand, and a blazing light snaps into existence, sparking the fear that it'll just conjure a whole building on the spot, until the glow surges brighter, and he locks his mind on the simple idea of a kid. The light detonates, and he freezes in shock as his hand jerks forward on its own, steered by something he can't see. In a blink, the whole process is over. Then there it is, a flawless stone foundation for something massive, and everyone just freezes, staring in stunned awe. He knelt at the magical foundation, realizing that at level 1 his carpentry power only let him sketch blueprints, nothing more, so he sprang back up and shouted for Rhodes and Bickle, begging them to help him turn the design into real paper. Vivian Butler tore into his blueprint and froze in amazement, then praised the gate design as top-notch and credits Angel's handiwork. Angel admitted he couldn't put it together by himself and begged for their help, thanking them before the work even started, then declared he'd let them handle the construction, and both Bickle and Vivian Butler nodded back with fierce, determined looks. With the plan locked in, the trio rushed to the far edge of the property, right where the new gate would rise, and Angel barked directions, pointing and driving the placement as they kicked off the work. They dove into their work like pros, slapping mortar together fast and setting the gate's pillars in place with steady, practiced precision. Hours slipped by beneath the afternoon sky as they pushed their work forward. At last, the ornate metal gate was finally standing tall, proof that all their hard work had somehow forged something real. Angel stared at the finished structure, grinning because the security was finally rock solid, and the view with that flower bed looked straight up beautiful. Right beside him, Sylvia and Vivi gasped in awe, and Sylvia blurted out that he'd actually fixed the gate. As the sky started to darken, Angel pushed to shut things down for the day, and Sylvia didn't hesitate. She said it was time to grab dinner. He's frozen at the dinner table, fork hovering in midair, when a wild plan hits him. He snaps his head up and blurts out, "Could we seriously remodel the whole house?" Sylvia's suggestion hits the group like a jolt of worry, because yes, the new gate stands strong, but the mansion behind it is falling apart in plain sight, and Angel can't shake the fear it'll collapse. Then Sylvia admits she doubts a handful of them could ever pull off something that massive. A whole new kind of worry hangs over Sylvia's face, and she mumbles about the house, so bewildered she asks, "Wait, what do you mean?" Sylvia bites her words, then whispers if something's about to come out. It hits Vivi like a truck. Her fear isn't about ghosts at all. It's about the terrifying idea that they might all become one real family, and that sudden weight crushes her, her face twisting in pure shock. Even with doubt gnawing at him, Anhal's resolve hardens. He stares at their crumbling home and declares, without wavering, "We'll renovate." He studies the blueprint he just drew, and yeah, the design looks solid, until a nasty, critical flaw snaps into focus. They're way too short on manpower, as right on cue, Vivian Butler swoops in with an answer, and calmly tells Angel he knows the perfect spot to point him toward for the job, lighting up his face with a burst of real hope. They follow Vivian's lead and race down the town's stone-paved streets, straight toward where they need to be. They roll up to a workshop where this huge, arms-crossed brute glares at a hole and sizes the situation up hard. Then he snaps at the boy to get out if he's just browsing, because his services are pricey and he's not here to play. Unshaken, the boy drops onto the nearby sofa and calmly swallows the man's terms. Then, with quiet confidence, shuts down the idea of half-baked jobs like they're beneath him. He sits across from the craftsman and flat-out declares that money is no issue, and the big, muscular guy, arms crossed, lets out a relieved breath, feeling reassured by those words. His face hardens into pure determination. He tells them, loud and clear, that as long as he can raise a safe house for his friends, he'll do whatever it takes, even if it means no way in hell he's living with cockroaches. The craftsman freezes, shocked by the fierce fire burning in the boy's eyes. After a beat, he rubbed his chin, locked in his decision, and slammed the deal forward, straight up asking if he'd take the job. The craftsman slams his terms on the table, 10 gold coins up front, then flat out says that's what it takes for an adult to lounge for a whole year, wondering if some kid can even cough up that much, while the insane price makes nearby animals jump like they can feel the cost. Even with shock still clawing at him, he snaps back and signs on to the terms without a second thought, whatever it takes, and the craftsman just watches, fascinated by the boy's unshakable will. A heavy pouch gets slammed onto the table between them, landing with a solid, final thud. He shoves the payment across and calls the man Master Builder, then hits him with the truth: some things are worth more than gold, plain and simple. The craftsman's face melts with understanding when he realizes the boy would sacrifice his whole fortune for his friends, but Anhul won't budge. He stamps down the moment with iron certainty. There's no chance in hell he's living with cockroaches. That declaration snaps the tension like a rubber band, and the craftsman explodes into loud, hearty laughter, yanking the boy into a rough, friendly headlock as he blurts out that he likes him. Anhul is left totally blindsided by the sudden, boisterous affection. Letting him go, the craftsman beams and swears he'll lend the boy his finest carpenter for the job, and the kid, practically vibrating with joy, thanks him from the bottom of his heart, because that brand new home is finally within reach. A hulking craftsman steps up and flashes a bright salute, Xiao, then tells him he'll be staying under Anhul's watch for a while, and Anhul greets him back with the same warm smile. Xiao then brings in the lead carpenter, who nods and says the mission is clear: renovate the mansion, and pushes them to start by tearing through the blueprints, before sealing the deal with a firm handshake from Anhul. When they ask for the blueprints, Anhul casually reveals, I already made them. The carpenter's jaw drops, like he can't believe this step is already done. He flips open the documents and starts scanning them, a small smirk creeping in as he realizes amateur designs almost never cut it for a real project. His doubts evaporate in an instant, then he freezes in shock. Xiao, glancing back over his shoulder, is completely stunned by the work's quality, and he blurts out that the design is flawless. Even with his jaw dropping at the plan, the lead carpenter snaps his attention to the next monster problem. He tells Anhul that the design is flawless, but the real nightmare is tracking down the massive pile of materials needed for the remodel too. To get their hands on lumber, the whole crew storms into a nearby forest. Right there, the lead carpenter flashes a one-of-a-kind talent, activating a skill that somehow makes everything, magically, fall into place and ready the trees, leaving Bickle and his assistant wide-eyed in shock. With the trees neatly felled, he and Bickle jump into action, hauling those giant logs out of the forest. Back at the site, the carpenter leans in and tells an awestruck Anhul he can log with the best of them. Then he grins and says everything's set, promising that if they ever run low on lumber, all he has to do is get the word. Anhul just stands there, stunned by the sheer power of it. He lifts his fist high, eyes burning with pure determination and unstoppable excitement. Standing with his crew of carpenters in front of the mansion's grim, weather-beaten facade, he slams the plan down and declares it's time to start the remodel, because everything's set and their one mission is crystal clear: build a new home that's safe, comfortable, and ready to breathe life into. Before the mansion renovation even started, Anhul dragged the whole construction crew together. Then the lead carpenter dropped the bomb. With a job this huge, they'd need at least 50 gold coins. Anhul's excitement was blazing as he lined in and told the team he was putting everything on them. Their excitement caught like wildfire. Sylvia suggested an open-air bath carved from gorgeous Gakeski stone, and Vivi, no way she'd let that slide, insisted that if they were expanding the house, the yard needed a slide and a swing too. With these fresh requests, the lead carpenter's face snapped tight as he hammered out the numbers on the abacus fast. Then he declared the new budget, 90 gold coins, and Anhul jerked back, already thinking, that's a bit too steep now. When Anhol balked at the cost, the hulking foreman Zio rubbed his chin and smirked. I've got a way to save money. Anhol, Sylvia, and Vivi all leaned in at once, eyes sparkling with curiosity and a wicked little thrill. Turns out the fix was simple. They'd supply the labor themselves, so Anhol was soon seen joyfully dragging a massive block of material across the grounds, grinning and saying he was on his way the moment they told him where to move next. Sylvia shouted for everyone to take a lunch break, and in the background, Bickle and Rode the butler were already hauling supplies too, because that's exactly how they planned to save money. During their break, the whole crew huddled together and dug into a well-earned feast from big lunchboxes packed with rice and all kinds of dishes, like one big happy team at the table. While they were eating, Shao the foreman swept over, waved them down, and praised Anhalfer's great work. Anhal, right beside Sylvia, just leaned into it with a satisfied smile and said the food's salty kick felt perfect after a whole morning of hard labor. He let out a quiet burst of frustration, wishing he could jump into the real building instead of only hauling materials, and the lead carpenter shot back that extra hands made all the difference, so Anhal nodded, relieved to be useful. Hearing that, Shao flashed a huge grin, flexed his arm, and practically bounced up as he asked Anhol if that meant he'd get to jump in and help with the real work for a bit. He sealed the deal in one breath, a single heartfelt yes. After he threw himself into the work, he staggered up to a finished wooden frame, completely wiped out. Then he spun to Sylvia and declared, I'm done. His work snapped the foreman's attention right into place. Shower practically proved that level 1 wasn't a bad start at all. He praised Annel's sharp efficiency and raw potential, then leaned in and asked if the boy would keep helping out. He kept grinding at the job, and every plank proved his carpentry skills were sharpening thanks to the task Shao handed him, so the foreman flashed a smile and urged him to keep it up, and Anhol immediately nodded, eager to carry on. Later, Bickle and Rode trekked back to their temporary digs, and Bickle couldn't stop talking about how badly he wanted to return to their real home, because they'd still have to wait until it was finished, no matter what. Rode nodded, grinning like they'd already swallowed the in the meantime part, since they'd grown used to the long end. They burst in and found Anhol crumpled on the floor. They rushed over, shouting his name, worried out of their minds. Rode muttered that, for a noble, doing this kind of hard labor had to be brutal. Then Anhol snapped upright, grinning like nothing happened, and insisted he was totally fine. He dropped back down and smirked to himself. Yeah, this was brutal, but he was determined to put everything he had into whatever he could do. This drive burned straight out of his past, back when the Belvalet family treated him like trash, shoved him in his room, and barred him from everything. Now his fist clenched with a savage thrill, because he finally realized he could step outside freely and do exactly what he wanted. He shot back up, grinning and insisting this kind of freedom was pure fun, and with a surge of his master spirit, Rode jumped in anything he could do, even offering a massage, while Bickle hurried off to grab him a drink, and Anhol gratefully took it all in. A week later, Sylvia burst onto the construction site, sure Anhol would be camped beside the foreman, but he wasn't there at all. She snapped, Zio, where is he? The foreman glanced over and said Anhol had warned him he had other plans for the day, and that job was taking priority. She and the others froze when Anhol popped back out of nowhere, no tools in sight, just a rifle over his shoulder, and a huge, freshly killed bird held up like a trophy. Pride lit up his face, and Sylvia and Shao just stared, utterly wrecked with confusion. He beamed as he bragged he'd been out hunting, and since the build was almost done, he said he figured everyone deserved the extra energy, so he went out to snag food for them, and Sylvia immediately shot back, so what new skill did you learn this time? His fresh hunting skill sat at level 1, while his carpenter craft was already level 4, and that gap hit him hard, because the more he pushed his skills into action, the higher they climbed and the more wild new things he could do with them opened up. With the bird ready and waiting, he rallied the crew and declared, we're eating that meat, right now, so we can tear into the final push. And exactly 1 month after construction kicked off, their work was finally coming to an end. That day finally hit, renovation done, the whole crew lined up before the stunning restored mansion, and Pure all lit up every face like, we actually did it. Inside, little Vivi's eyes lit up at the stunning new living room, and she couldn't stop taking it all in, the roomy kitchen, the extra space, the way it all screamed that more companions were coming soon, and the thought of cooking here made her grin with pure, bubbling excitement. Everyone felt the same way, and one woman lit up with an idea. Let's throw a party to celebrate when the house is finally done. She even suggested they all cook together, and the rest nodded fast, knowing this moment deserved a celebration big enough to match the occasion. The whole crew dove into prepping the feast. Sylvia snapped at Anhol for his clumsy way of butchering, but he just shrugged and said he'd use a skill to handle the bird. Then Vickle stepped in, pushing that Master Anhol should let Vivian take over. While that argument fired up, everyone else chopped veggies and stirred the pots, moving like a perfect team. Together, they crushed it, laying out an absolutely magnificent feast on the table. The meal was finally finished, dripping with pure deliciousness, and Bickle couldn't help but brag that it was all because they cooked side by side. A hand shot up with a mug in it, begging for a toast, because now was the moment to properly celebrate the mansion's renovations. Smiling at his side, his crew closes in as Anhole thrusts a frothing mug overhead. Then everyone roars with him, clinking and chanting a single wild cheer that screams, loud and proud, "We did it." Right in the middle of all that revelry, one guy throws out a wild idea. "Let's turn the new mansion into our runway fashion show." Everyone lights up at once. Just then, Vivian Butler slips close to Vivi and quietly praises her, saying it was Vivi who sliced up the feast's vegetables so skillfully. The crowd starts reacting, until Xiao leans in and growls a warning to the fashion show guy. "If you push this, you're going to regret it." Inhole takes it all in, calm and satisfied, a soft smile lighting up his face as he clutches his drink and savors the moment. His eyes sweep across the bounty in front of them, the fruits of hunting, farming, fishing, and carpentry, and it hits him instantly. It's his production skills that make his whole squad's life like this possible. He took a long, steady drink, then sat with his thoughts, and when he felt his skills keep leveling up, he knew he could build an even better life for everyone. Suddenly, the future didn't feel scary at all. It felt huge, bright, and wide open. Just as he sinks into quiet thoughts, Vivi's voice cuts through the moment. She's cheering over the delicious duck he snagged, yelling at him to come sit with them. He glances at his friends, then at the mansion behind them, and feels a rush of pure, deep satisfaction. He remembers when it was just a few of them, then watches their little group explode into something full of life. So with a grin and a loud shout, he dashes over to join their outdoor feast. The table is basically a snapshot of pure joy. Everyone's digging in, roaring with laughter, and sharing that perfect, blissful sense of togetherness. The party keeps roaring with pure, unfiltered joy. Sylvia and Vivi are dancing like there's no tomorrow, while Xiao and Vivian Butler clink bottles and trade laughs that ring through the night. As the celebrations fade, the sky erupts into a breathtaking blanket of stars and blazing comets, quietly sealing a perfect day in pure, peaceful wonder. The celebratory feast finally wraps up, and empty plates and clinking glasses hang there like a victory banner for the great food and even better company. One of the diners, a bright, cheerful young woman, bursts into hearty laughter, eyes shutting tight with pure joy as she blurts out that she's totally stuck. Around the table, everyone echoes her feelings. Bickle flat-out admits he never thought he'd ever get to stuff himself on a feast like this. Vivi, the little kid, can't stop dreaming about a party every single day, but Sylvia smiles and reminds her. The reason these moments are so amazing is exactly because they're rare. As their cheerful chatter rolls on, someone finally clocks how late it's getting, and their voices trail off while they stare up at the dark, cloud-choked night sky. The whole crew finally agrees it's time to crash and rest, yet one of them groans at the idea of clocking back in. Still, the cheerful woman beams and swears she'll go all out on breakfast, while Vivi can't wait and jumps in to help right away. Their minds are already racing to make their new home better. Bickle even pitches expanding the fields, and Anhold jumps in fast, ready to help. Then another young guy steps up, urging everyone to push even harder again, starting tomorrow. Their shared grit now echoes through the grand mansion they've claimed as home, proof of everything they've fought for and everything they're chasing next, and every single one of them vows to keep pushing forward together with. With their morning plans locked in, the whole crew starts peeling off for the night, one by one. The young man who lit the spark watches them vanish down the road, wishing them a good night, only for the boy to fire back the same kind of wishes. He starts to walk away, then a voice yanks him back. Sylvia. She's right there, gripping a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, inviting him to share one last nightcap before bed, and Anna immediately says yes. Under the night sky, they huddle at a small table, and she grins as she tells him he still blows her away, then asks if there's anything he can't do, before Inhole panics, blurts that it's completely not true, and tries to talk her out of it. He stood there with Sylvia before the grand mansion, eyes on the lights, replaying the whole night like a movie, because the truth was, they could enjoy a party in a place this incredible only because everyone pulled together. Then he spun back to her and poured out his sincere gratitude. Sylvia beamed right away, flowers bouncing in her hair, and she told him it was only natural, because they were each other's companions. Over a shared bottle of wine, he tossed out a joke. Why not their next project be a castle? Sylvia couldn't help but grin, loving how it sounded, and she knew Vivian especially would be thrilled by the idea. His playful tone snapped into something sharper when he confessed he'd already mapped out their next moves, and even though building a storehouse crossed his mind, he had a totally different plan. Just watching Sylvia's curiosity spike was priceless. She blurted out, asking if his plan meant blowing up their farm with even more fields to grow mountains of vegetables. Then he just shut it down and said, "Nope, that's not what I'm trying to do." A grin as wide as the night slammed onto his face as he lifted his glass and dropped the bombshell. He was going to a dungeon. A shockwave of an unexpected announcement hit Sylvia so hard she went totally speechless, eyes bulging with disbelief, until she could only spit out one jagged question: why? Outside a brand new building, Bickle grins and tells Anhul the storehouse he begged for is finally done, and Anne's eyes light up as she stands with him, and a stern young woman in a dark hood, staring at the finished walls. He wastes no time, thanking them and pouring out his gratitude for the quick work. Then Sylvia steps in, but the hooded woman barges right through, firing off one burning question. Why on earth is he trying to go to a place like Dungeon Guardia? That dungeon she mentioned, Dungeon Guardia, is the only one in the whole Guardia kingdom, tucked away in St. Luria, and nobody even knows how deep it really goes, because every single adventurer who tries to reach the bottom has failed to make it to the lowest floor. That terrifying reputation doesn't scare Anhul one bit. He daydreams about what's hidden inside, picturing himself striking it rich, then finally giving his friends the kind of comfortable life they've always deserved. His bright hopes don't stop Sylvia's worry for a second. She storms up to him with clasped hands and spills the truth. She's scared. She points out that, yeah, he's a beast at production, but in combat he's a total rookie. Then he tries to calm her down anyway, pats her on the head, and swears he's thought the whole plan through. To prove he's got a real plan, he whips out his new power, Swordsmith Level 1, and his friends just stare, totally lost. He explains he unlocked it when his hunting skill leveled up, and that the whole reason for building the storehouse was so he'd finally have a place to use it. He shoots off a confident grin and vows to forge powerful weapons with his swordsmith skill, because once he's armed up, he's sure he'll be more than ready to take on the dungeon. With the plan locked in, the crew storms into the brand new storehouse. Then Anhul squares up, ready to prove his skills, but when Sylvia's eyes meet his, her face stays bruised with worry, dripping doubt like it won't let go. Even with doubt still clawing at her, Anhul steps up and leans on his swordsmith talent. He thrusts his hands forward and bam, a blinding burst of light explodes, washing the whole room in glow while his friends stare, holding their breath to see what weapon he'll forge next. As the light dies out, the silence hangs there, until Bickle snaps it open, staring the problem in the face. Blacksmithing needs materials to forge anything at all. Anhul freezes at that blunt truth, then immediately decides he's heading out to buy the supplies. He strides into a weapon shop, and the owner beams at him, asking if he's hunting something truly brutal. Then he points to a beautiful blade and unveils the Golden Lion's sword, the deadliest thing in the shop. The catch is it's the priciest too. He grips the sword and swings it once, judging the balance. Yeah, it feels right, so he nods, confirms he can handle it, pays up, and thanks the shopkeeper like he's sealing a deal. His enthusiasm practically screams his secret. The shopkeeper instantly clocks that Anhul can forge steel, so the man decides he's going to upgrade the weapon himself. Then, with a sharp little smile, he tells him he'll need something else too. He slams a box down, packed with dark, shimmering spheres, and says these are enhancement orbs, material meant to supercharge weapons, then adds that 5 of them should be more than enough to handle the job. Anhul jolts the shopkeeper by demanding 30 of the orbs, and he lays it out plain. He can't take on monsters with protection skills, so he needs a real power boost, a stronger weapon. Once the deal's done, he slams a golden lion sword and 1 orb onto a workbench, ready to start. With fresh fire in his chest, he shoots his hands forward, dead certain this try will finally work. He calls on his swordsmith magic, and crackling energy starts swirling around his fingertips. Energy blasts outward, wrapping the sword and the orb at once, yanking them into a blinding flash of light as the enhancement kicks off. When the glow finally fades, he wipes the sweat off his brow, breathless with relief, because it worked. The Golden Lion's sword is now upgraded to +1. The next day, he digs in and decides to forge the sword even stronger, because if Sylvia lays eyes on the blade he crafted with his skill, he's sure her worries will finally melt away. Across the way, Sylvia and Vivian snap to attention when they hear someone shouting their names. They snap their heads around as Anhul strides in, clutching the finished weapon high above his head, and Sylvia blurts, "What is that?" Her face caught between wild curiosity and sharp worry as she studies it, because to her, it just looks like an ordinary weapon. She locks her eyes on his anchor hole, blazing with confidence, and tells her and Vivi, "Back up, watch this." His face tightens with raw resolve as he lifts the newly enhanced sword, ready to show exactly what it can do. He hurls his blade with everything he's got, and it carves straight through the trunk of a massive tree, so clean it's terrifying. Sylvia and Vivi can only freeze, eyes bulging as shock and disbelief crash over them. The tree crashes down with a thunderous roar, and Vivi gasps in pure amazement. Then she whips around and sends them a proud wink. Right after that, he starts bragging that with his golden lion sword, he'll cut through any enemy in one clean blow, telling them flat out not to worry. His bravado barely dents Sylvia's fear. She flashes a small, gentle smile that doesn't convince her, even as she admits his performance still doesn't make her worry go away. She crosses her arms, her face going stone serious as she slams a glaring hole in his plans. He needs armor too, period. Anhol's caught off guard, but when he hears her logic, he can only nod like, yeah, she's right. Relief washes over him as he realizes she's finally a little less worried, and he beams right back, agreeing they should hunt down the absolute best armor, one that looks amazing and hits hard. Vivi practically bounces with excitement and declares she's coming with them. With their new mission locked in, the crew pushes into the loud heart of town, and as the rooftops streak past, the wind tugs at his leaves like it's carrying the city's secrets. These streets are crawling with a totally different kind of crowd. Anhol suddenly finds himself boxed in by battle-hardened adventurers, a kid in a huge wizard's hat, a smooth-talking man with slick-back hair, and a stone-cold warrior strapped in sturdy pauldrons. He whips his head around, totally overwhelmed, while Sylvia stares in wide-eyed wonder at everything around them, saying she's never been here and can already feel the adventures stacked everywhere. Anhol chimes in that this town has always been right next to the dungeon. Even with all that energy in the air, he admits he still feels a bit out of place beside the hardened veterans, so Sylvia motions toward a nearby building and says it looks like a solid armor shop. Anil nods and they decide to rush there right now. He fights for every step inside that heavy full-plate armor, like the metal is trying to trap him, and it's way too clunky to move. Sylvia pushes him to get real protection, but Anhol can barely keep his footing. Meanwhile, Vivi is right there, stuck in his awful stand. Just as Vivi starts to drift off, someone slips past and jostles her. She gasps in shock at the sudden contact. The blonde adventurer she barreled into drops to one knee, warns her to watch her step because wandering streets bite back, then grins at Anhol and Sylvia and tells them, keep your eyes on the kid. Vivi blurts an apology as they push forward. The adventurer and his crew snap their focus back to the notice in front of them, a mercenary recruitment ad, and he even tossed out a quick apology for the whole interruption. Sylvia overheard them and blurted out, so you're really mercenaries. The adventurers beamed, saying they'll take on anything, bodyguard gigs to straight-up dungeon diving. Still trapped in all that armor, he sinks into the weight of their situation and quietly tells Sylvia, I think we'd be safer with an experienced escort. Then he hesitates, because asking them out of nowhere feels way too sudden. Sylvia just looks torn, like she's holding back what she really wants to say. Even with doubts chewing at her, Sylvia steels her nerves and strides up to the group, asking point-blank if they're available for hire, an escort job inside Dungeon Guardia, and one of the mercenaries starts to weigh the offer in his mind. The blonde adventurer snorts and shuts his companion down with a dismissive laugh, then says that teaming up to explore a dungeon while babysitting a rich kid is way too much, offering a condescending apology like it's a joke. And Hall's face immediately darkens as the insults land. Suddenly, the tension gets ripped apart by a blood-curdling scream, then a massive white wolf barrels into the street, jaws wide, roaring like a nightmare, and sending everyone scrambling in panic. And Hall's irritation instantly evaporates, and panic slams in. He spots the white wolf and blurts out that it must have escaped from Guardia. Then without a second thought, he screams at his companions to run while the crowd scrambles and scatters to safety. As he and his companions stood there, stiff with shock, the mercenaries suddenly lunged into action. The blonde man flashed a grin, fingers already gripping his sword, and barked at Isis, telling her to draw the white wolf's attention while he dealt with everything else. As Isis started chanting and dark energy spiraled around her, vowing to smash the beast with magic, Sylvia yanked Anhol's arm and yelled for him to run, yet he refused to move, frozen in awe at the sheer power unfolding in front of him. His awesome got cut off the second his eyes snapped past the raging battlefield. There, huddled alone by the stairs, was a tiny child shaking with pure terror. Sylvia panicked and yanked at him, screaming that if he got involved, it would be the end for them. Then Anil snapped back, telling her to grab Vivi and run to safety, swearing he wouldn't leave the girl behind. He cupped his hands to his mouth and roared at the mercenaries, desperate to get their attention to the stranded child. But when he shouted, the chaos swallowed his voice. Those mercenaries were locked onto the lunging beast, too busy to catch his warning, and helplessness slammed into him as he scrambled to find his next move. The massive wolf slammed down with a brutal impact, cracking the stone street and blasting jagged rock shards straight toward the terrified girl. In a blink, he hurled himself over the child, taking the blast straight on to shield her, then dropped to the ground to check if she was all right. She only whimpered that she was okay, while Sylvia and Vivi stared on in horror. He snapped his gaze up from the dirt and froze. There was a white wolf looming over them, jaws gaping for the kill, and right as it started to drop, a swordsman surged in to block its strike. The blonde mercenary shot up in front of them like a living wall, praising Anhol's courage and admitting that the kid had saved them. Then he promised his crew would finish the rest of the fight. The blonde mercenary suddenly snatches him up, along with the little child, then barks for them to move before the blast hits, while on a nearby rooftop the dark-haired mercenary, Isis, calls out that her chanting is finally done. With her prep locked in, Isis hurls out a tidal wave of magic. Right where she stands, a monstrous blast detonates and a white-hot flash swallows the white wolf hole, leaving Anhol staring in total stunned disbelief. The light dies down and there it is, the wreckage of that brutal attack. A giant white wolf sprawls on the cobblestone, totally still, and its rampage has been cut off for good, like someone slammed the door on its fury. He just freezes, staring in total speechlessness at that terrifying display of power, while the boy blurts out stammers of disbelief, because those mercenaries wiped out the beast of legend in one crushing, overwhelming strike. Moments later, Sylvia and Vivi bolt to his side, fear written all over their faces. Sylvia's bursting with relief, thanking him again and again, while he can only give a soft nod, still reeling from what just happened. As Anhol regains his footing, the blonde man straight up thanks him for jumping in, only for Anhol to wave it off like it was nothing. The mercenary shrugs and admits he's still not thrilled by someone charging into a brawl with no weapon, but now he can't help rethinking that first harsh verdict. With a grin, he admits he'd totally misread Anhol at first, assuming the kid was just a rich thrill chaser, but now he's fully flipped the script, saying Anhol's got real guts and he's changed his mind. With a fresh spark of respect in his eyes, the mercenary steps forward and proudly introduces his crew. He points to the dark-haired warrior and names her Isis, then signals to the cloaked woman and calls her near. Once everyone's in place, he snaps the talk right back to the escort job Anhol had asked about earlier. Then he blurts out that they're taking the job, and that shock hits everyone so hard it leaves the whole room stunned. The mercenary snaps in a condition, no cheap work, period, and then fires off, how much can you pay? Without a beat, Anhol blurts out, 5 gold coins a month. And the moment that number hits, Sylvia and Vivi stare, stunned, like their brains can't process it. He shoots out his hand and tells the mercenary, just call me Exile, no boss, no begging, we fight as equals, and the blonde Lim grins and grips back, instantly on board. Lim looks genuinely stunned by the kid's vibe, because Exil's nothing like the stuck-up nobles he expected. His shock melts into pure happy acceptance. All right then, I'll do it. He blurts, then whips around to his friends. He slings an arm over Isis, the dark-haired warrior, pulling her right into the moment, and next to them Nur erupts in delighted laughter at this fresh new setup. A cheerful blonde mercenary named Lim cracks a grin, introduces himself, and then lets his two crews spill out. Isis, dark-haired and sharp-eyed, and Nir, cloaked like a mystery, just arriving on the scene. Anhol and the crew give the newcomers a proper, no-nonsense welcome, while Vivi, that thoughtful little kid, just stares at them like something big has instantly changed. With wide, curious eyes, she instantly locks onto the staff Nur is gripping, jammed right against the gate, and Vivi blurts out, asking if it's magic, then begs to see it for herself. Nur lines in and confirms, yeah, she really is going to use magic. In a sweet little miracle, Nir flicks his magic and poof, shimmering flowers bloom, and Vivi can't help but gasp, staring with pure, wide-eyed wonder. Later, during the mercenaries' welcome party, Lim leans in and says it feels so good to finally have people who can actually fight. Then he offers Anhol's sword training, and you can practically see the kid's eyes light up. As night drapes over the grand estate, the whole crew gets a proper, formal welcome into their brand new home. Time keeps sliding by, and at last, today, the day to take the dungeon head-on finally shows up. Right before the adventuring party charges off, Sylvia sends them off with a warm wish, do your best, and come back with a ton of dungeon stories, and in whole nods, fully confident. Her face tightens with worry as she calls out to Anhol, begging him to be careful. Then he whips around with a bright grin, telling her he'll be fine, because that sword is powered up with his production skills. He reassures her she can finally breathe easy, and his brand new buddies immediately jump in. We've got you, and we're right here with him. So her fear just melts into a bright, relieved smile as she shoos them off, grinning, wishing them a safe trip, and teasing them to come back loaded with treasure. The crew finally slammed into their destination, the stone-walled entrance to Dungeon Guardia. As the mercenaries stormed in, they claimed the lead like they owned the battlefield, and their experience practically shouted in every step. Lim jerked his head back to Anhol, warning him this was his first real fight and to not overreach, while Anhol shot back in a quiet denial that it was his first time, and Sylvia just watched, clocking how effortlessly the mercenaries handled violence. Even with the warning ringing in his ears, Anhol wouldn't let them leave him behind. He made up his mind that they were comrades now, and with a sharp flash of light, his brand new golden lion sword snapped into his grip, stunning the mercenaries. Lim couldn't deny it, his power had them stunned, and the swing was straight up solid. Isis leaned in, praised the sword for how it performed, and she clocked it instantly as the power of production, so the whole crew perked up with fresh confidence and shouted, "All right, no more stopping, we keep moving." Igniting the command he'd just unleashed, he bulldozed into the dungeon and drove the whole party deeper through the twisting halls, while Sylvia kept pace right behind, clutching Vivi and shouting at everyone to stay right there and not get left behind. Their hard-won progress cracked the mystery right open. There it all was on the floor, priceless materials scattered everywhere, and they quickly scraped them down, tested what they found, and identified everything. Gale wings, ultramarine water, and even a fossil pulled from an ancient tree. Lim couldn't hold back his excitement over this so-called prophet, practically insisting that Dungeon Guardia should deliver treasures like this every time. While the mercenary reveled, Angel's eyes snagged on something else, and he rushed over to Isis to ask what it was. He leaned in to study that huge striped thing, and then it hit him. It wasn't just random loot, it was a monster egg, a rare drop, and with the right skill, it could let someone tame the monster that would hatch from it. That spark lit up his imagination, painting a wild fantasy of himself, finally mastering a breathtaking white-scaled dragon. Back in reality, he gripped the egg tight and finally faced the real problem. He didn't have a taming skill yet. Still, he swore to himself that someday he'd learn it, then safely tuck that precious egg into his item bag. He and his fresh crew pushed deeper into the dungeon, and soon they burst onto the 10th floor of Dungeon Guardia, this huge, pale stone chamber, eerily empty. Their sprinting finally pays off, because right ahead sits this ornate treasure chest, and Lim practically points it out mid-breath, claiming that milestone floors like this always lock in the good loot. Then he stares at the thing and goes, "Whoa, the design is way more intricate than anything we've seen yet." Right as they get closer, Lim's confident explanation cracks, and then a massive shadow looms over them. A deep, low growl rips through the chamber as a massive white wolf crashes into view, staring down the intruders, and Lim instantly spots it as the boss guarding the chest, while Anhol realizes this beast has zero plans to hand over its treasure for free. Lim doesn't hesitate, he explodes forward, roaring for the others to fall back, and Anhol just stares in shock as the mercenary shrugs off yet another monster that tries to block his way. The guardian wolf snaps back with a brutal, lightning-fast strike, and right as that fist of fury drops, Isis surges forward, screams that she'll slam the attack right back into the beast. Lim yells that Anhold should back off and let them handle it, but right when a crack of opportunity flashes, Anhold pounces, shouting that this is his moment to slam in the finishing blow. His blade lands true, but the wolf only staggers and snaps out an irritated growl. This thing is far from finished, and the moment his sword fails to end it, Hasuk holsters it in disbelief, his confidence crumbling. Even after that brutal setback, the party keeps pushing, and together they finally smash the great wolf and bring it down. Then Anhold hurls his sword up like a trophy and roars in triumph as everyone erupts in celebration of their hard-earned win. With the guardian crushed, he snaps his focus back to the prize and sprints toward the chest, already imagining it stuffed with gold, silver, and every treasure imaginable. He yanks open the chest, and there it is, just one rusty sword inside. His companions stare in pure disbelief like, what is this and why? His companions grimace, convinced the blade is a dud. Then a hole grips the sword, and right away, he feels it's no ordinary weapon, and he realizes his swordsmith skills may be the key. Lim points at the dungeon and says there are more floors waiting to be explored, then asks for the plan. Inhal barely speaks, quietly shutting that down, because his thoughts are already locked on something else. Calling it a night, he and his crew marched back to base, and the second they arrived, a whole crowd of friends and allies exploded into cheers, with Sylvia and Vivi right in the middle, staring in stunned silence at the ridiculous mountain of dungeon loot stacked before them. Sylvia starts to panic, wondering if they can really sell a rock that looks like any other, but Lim sweeps in and confidently judges its worth about 20 gold, shattering both her and Anhol with pure shock. As the crew pushes through the hall, an over-the-moon Vivi grabs the moment and demands, "Tell me everything about that dungeon run." Sylvia then spots a huge mamo egg they just hauled in, and the way it dwarfs everything leaves them all staring. Then he turns to Isis and Nur and orders them to sort through the rest of the war spoils, and once that's locked in, he strides off toward the storehouse, his mind racing over a mysterious sword. All alone in the storehouse, he rips the rusty sword onto his shoulder, and that bold, knowing wink flashes like, "Don't judge it yet." He's got a plan for a blade everyone thinks is worthless. He locks onto the weapon, slams his appraisal skill, and bam, a crystal-bright shimmer flashes in his eyes, revealing from a distance, it looks like nothing but a battered old sword. His skill cracked the truth wide open. This sword was really a rusted demon blade, low on power right now, but it used to be a masterpiece, and Swordsmith can bring it back. He instantly knew it wasn't just some ordinary sword. He weighed his choices, then realized that if he kept popping enhancement orbs, he could hammer the blade back to full power. With his hard work paying off, he erupted in a triumphant cry and lifted the gleaming, fully restored demon, sword aloft, staring at it in pure awe, like only a true swordsmith could. That achievement lit a fire in his chest, pure excitement, and now he was certain. With this new weapon in hand, he'd smash even stronger monsters and push deeper into the dungeon than ever. The next morning, a sharp, high-pitched squeal ripped through the air and yanked him out of sleep. He shot upright in bed, heart racing, and shouted, "Alarm." That strange squeaking kept screaming on, yanking his eyes to a huge bag on the floor, twitching and shaking like it was about to break free. His eyes popped wide with confusion, because he recognized it instantly, the item bag he'd stuffed with all the loot from his dungeon expeditions. Suddenly, the bag ripped open and two tiny creatures spilled out. Anhol's eyes went wide, and his gaze snapped to the broken remains of the monster egg he'd collected. It hit him in an instant. It had already hatched. The two hatchlings, this tiny winged unicorn and a little dragon, didn't show an ounce of fear. They pressed up against him like they belonged there, cuddling close, and as he cradled these unexpected newborns, he stared down in utter shock and awe, totally lost on what to do next. A young girl with reddish hair stares at two brand new hatchlings like her heart is on fire. One is a tiny sparkling winged unicorn, the other a spotted dragon baby. When they both let out a soft coo, she's completely and utterly captivated. Her companions crowd in, each one reacting differently, and the girl blurts out that the creatures are adorable, while Nur watches with sharp concern, snapping that sure they're just babies, but don't get it twisted. They're still dangerous monsters. Her crush won't budge. She presses her cheek to the dragon hatchling, and it squeaks happily, totally clueless that danger might be lurking. Anhol watches them, eyes sharp and mind racing. Then he leans into the moment, stunned that the egg hatched and that a whole new taming skill showed up right after. So, what if I could sell the little ones? He wonders, like the idea might explode any second. Hearing that, Lim jumps right in with excitement, saying dragons and unicorns are super rare and would sell for a fortune. And Isis chimes in with the smart plan, take them to the monster shop in town, because they'll definitely buy. The girl overhears everything, whips around in pure horror and shouts, "No way, absolutely not," her voice cutting through with absolute certainty. She cradles the creatures close, declaring she'll raise them herself, and when Anhol warns her, he admits her taming skills could help, but a dragon and a unicorn are brutal from day one, since they're only going to grow bigger and bigger. Lim, still bursting with hope, blurts that it could be a game changer. Just imagine how useful they'll be in dungeon runs once they're grown. Anhol stays stuck in doubt, but the girl fires back with a heartfelt plea. If a slave can grow into family, then why can't a monster? Her words hit him like a hammer. Anhold freezes, torn up inside, hands clasped tight as he wrestles with her point. The girl stares back with pleading, hopeful eyes, and Lim silently presses in too, hands together, begging Anhold to finally say yes. Anhold finally cracks with a small smile, all right. And the moment he does, the girl and Nur burst into wild, joyous celebration, faces lighting up with pure relief and happiness. With the call finally made to keep the creatures, the group scrambled into a heated talk about who would handle all the care. Vivi, the red-haired girl, threw herself into the job with zero hesitation, volunteering on the spot, but the others shot back fast. Sylvia had her chores to finish. Isis and her partner were constantly slipping off to explore the dungeon, and Bickle was tied up in the fields, so the real question hit hard: who was actually going to take responsibility? Sylvia stayed pure optimism and promised Anil they'd stick together and be fine. Then Vivi cradled the two hatchlings and suddenly knew they needed names, while Anil went quiet, racking her brain for what to call them. With her mind made up, Vivi proudly blurted out their names: Corn for the unicorn, which let out a tiny, tender cry, and Woolru for the little dragon, and she officially introduced them, praying they'd finally learn to get along starting now. As everyone started introducing themselves, Anne clocked it. Corin and Wiru were starving. Sylvia immediately started thinking, what would baby monsters even eat? And before anyone could blink, she decided milk was the safest bet and hurried off to warm some up. Two little creatures gulped warm milk with hungry joy, their tiny bodies shaking from the sheer effort, making everyone watching melt instantly. Sylvia watched them eat, grinning wide as she urged them to gulp it down so they'd grow big and strong. Then she even had ice tossed in, knowing they'd need a pen soon. Lemagreed stepped up right away and volunteered to run off and ask the masters to get it arranged. And he'll just watch them, a small smile tugging at his face, because he knows plain milk won't stretch far, and they're going to have to stock up on real food soon. For now, though, he focuses on one thing: taking care of Wuru and the rest. Few days later, the mansion's walls snapped open as a scream tore through the air, so loud it froze everyone. Shocked, Anil blurted out Sylvia's name, panic spiking in her voice. They sprinted toward the noise, and what they saw hit them like lightning. Weuru, the dragon, had shot up in size in an instant, towering over everyone and swallowing the grand hall with its massive bulk, while Korn the unicorn had ballooned too. And Hole just stared at the sky in stunned disbelief, murmuring Weiru's name. Out on the grounds, a light-haired young man spotted the enlarged unicorn and clucked his tongue at it, warning Korin to stay put before it freaks everyone out. Then he caught sight of Anhul, shouted his alias, "I shall," and basically told him, "It's high time we go back to exploring." He just stood there, stunned by Weiru's massive new form, while the light-haired guy stared too. Then he grinned and said that now the dragon had grown bigger, they could finally haul it into the dungeon with them. He whipped around to the dragon and challenged it straight up. "Are you ready?" Weiru roared back with pure hype, snapping its claws out as if it couldn't wait to get started. Their quest slammed them deep underground, straight to the entrance of the Guardia dungeon's 11th floor. In those cold stone corridors, the light-haired man rolled out a magic cage and bragged that it could shrink any monster for easy hauling. Then he shouted for Weiru to come out, and the dragon immediately swelled back to its full, terrifying size. He stared down that endless hallway, shielding his eyes from the glare, and announced, "Starting today, our exploration kicks off on the 11th floor." The road ahead was blocked by brutal boss-class monsters, a skeletal knight crushed in heavy armor, and a savage draconic beast, and from the way they stood there, this fight was going to be terrifyingly hard. Even with danger screaming at them, he shot his fist up, confidence blazing in his chest, and told his crew that with Weiru and his brand-new demon sword, they'd smash through the 15th floor that very day. He tuned his plan with caution, because it was Wulru's first fight, so he told everyone, "Don't hammer the dragon too hard. If danger spikes, make it slip straight into the magic cage and let it be contained." Before he could finish the thought, Wul tore past him, launching straight at the enemy, like a bolt of lightning. The cloaked mercenary was already a blur, and her weapon snapped into action as the young dragon bellowed and slammed into the fight. The fight ended in a blink. Weiru stood tall over the fallen, clutching a treasure chest like it was nothing. Anil and his companion just froze on the spot, staring in disbelief at the demon sword's brutal power, and that's when they realized they finally reached the 15th floor. He stood in the field as Sylvia charged over, her face glowing with excitement. She shouted his name and thrust a basket at him, packed to the brim with their harvest, and while he thanked her, guilt hit him hard. It felt wrong letting her shoulder his chores when she had her own to deal with. He stared out over the endless, sectioned rice paddy, realizing just how brutal the workload was for a plot of land that size. As everything finally clicked, his mind raced, because after all those dungeon runs, he'd stumbled into a wild, brand new power, farming. Thanks to that one skill, he could finally work these fields and grow crops, turning this place into a thriving, bustling farmstead. By stacking it all with his other skills, cultivation, hunting, and even taming the dungeon's loot, he finally built a steady income that kept his life solid and secure. Elsewhere, Lim was already celebrating their big win, giving Wulru full credit for being a massive help, while Anhul stood there with a pile of full baskets and loudly praised the young dragon, who chirped right back like, "You bet." Then Lim's eyes snapped to Anhul again, stunned by how much he'd managed to scoop up. Once Lim wrapped up his own work for the day, he nodded, thanked them, and then stepped in, ready to help with the harvest. Out in the field, Anhul stared at the calm scenery, praying he could just stay in this easy, slow life for a while, until Vivi's voice suddenly cut through the air and called his name from far away. She sprinted closer, and her words hit like an alarm. He had a visitor. Anil's calm face shattered instantly, replaced by pure worry. The headline slammed into both him and Vivi, and they both just froze, eyes wide, breath caught in their throats. He gaped in stunned confusion at the fancy white carriage that had suddenly rolled up outside his home, while Vivi stood right beside him, just as baffled by the shock of his sudden arrival. Something was definitely off. His mind was racing. Could that fancy carriage belong to the Belbalat family? Just as the thought hit, Vivi looked up and asked if they were his friends, and he quietly shook his head. Right as he spoke, the carriage door swung open, and out stepped an elegantly dressed older woman, smiling softly like she already knew his name. Anhul's eyes caught the strange decorations, and it hit him hard. That crest wasn't from Guardia. He turned to her, heart pounding, and demanded, "Who are you?" Teresa stepped in, introduced herself as the mother of the Rose Free Kingdom's current king, and Bickle tried to cut in that she came on way too strong. She brushed him off like he didn't matter. When it hit that she was the Queen Dowager, Anhul and Vivi both froze, and Teresa locked eyes with Anhul, said his name, and then, no hesitation, told him, "I've come to ask you for a favor." Before he could even process the royal demand from a neighboring kingdom, Teresa's face snapped into pure panic. she clutched her hands to her chest and begged him with everything she had to save their kingdom.